For years, SpongeBob fans thought they knew Mr. Krabs' darkest moment: one-course meal. After that episode, fans started saying, okay, this man is no longer cheap funny, he's just evil. And yet, the writers still managed to come up with something even darker for Mr. Krabs. An episode so gross, so chaotic and badly timed, it left a bad taste in people's mouths for a lot of different reasons. After watching this episode closely, you'll realize this is the most raw, most unfiltered look at Mr. Krabs' true character the show has ever given us, and why it makes One Course Meal look almost tame in comparison. Just like any episode involving Mr. Krabs' greed as a plot, this episode opens on a normal day at the Krusty Krab. Only this time, Krabs' two best gals are here to grab some lunch. SpongeBob also comes up, saying hi, while serving the Krabby Patties with his eyelids. But then suddenly the health inspector kicks down the door. He scans the room with his detector thingy and announces someone here has the highly contagious clam flu. Just like that, the plot escalates in the first minute. They locked up the Krusty Krab and put warning signs up all over it. Everyone instantly panics. Except SpongeBob, who thinks quarantine means a sleepover. And Patrick, who doesn't know what a quarantine is, but he's excited anyway. Squidward steps in to crush the mood, explaining this means they'll be trapped inside with a sick person until they all get sick. Plankton is also here in the middle of his patty stealing operation, but decides the quarantine is too much for his cause and immediately leaves. With Plankton getting incinerated right in the front door, they all realize the health department is not playing. They are taking this quarantine stuff very seriously. Which would already be bad enough if Mr. Krabs didn't immediately make things 10 times worse. He starts telling stories from his old Navy days and how they handled situations when someone had a disease. And by handled, I mean, we just locked the sick guy in the freezer and waited until they stopped being a problem. So Mrs. Puff asks, surely they were let out after the disease was gone, right? Krabs basically shrugs, says someone probably let them out. And boy, does that sound like the first red flag. But before we go any further, I have to point out, any confusion that comes up later is caused by really vague information from the health inspector. He just said, someone in this room has the clam flu and now you all get quarantined. I mean, he doesn't even bother to check who actually has it, let alone treat the person with proper medication. Nope, they just lock them up and hope it sorts itself out. So they all somewhat agreed with the Navy way, mostly because no one had a better idea. Krabs then asks who's feeling sick, but since no one feels a thing, Krabs just gets mad and announces he'll personally examine everyone to find the sick one with forceps. But before Krabs could make use of those forceps, Squidward panics and accidentally makes SpongeBob sneeze, so the entire room turns on him like a witch trial. But, bless SpongeBob's heart, he said he'll go to the freezer willingly even though he feels fine in order to protect everyone. Well, Krabs didn't hesitate even for a second. He shoves SpongeBob straight into the freezer. And this becomes the pattern of the whole episode. Krabs will nitpick anything weird from anyone and make it the very reason to throw them into the freezer. Patrick saw SpongeBob enjoying chocolate ice cream in the freezer, so he decided to smear his face with green relish to get thrown into the freezer with him. They're both having a good time inside the freezer, obviously. Meanwhile, the rest of the group starts to feel more tension with two people gone, especially after Krabs said anyone could be a carrier. Then Squidward gets accused of being sick, just for scratching his arm. Tentacle. Mrs. Puff also gets thrown in simply because she's yawning. And lastly, Krabs got suspicious of his own daughter Pearl, just because Pearl was giving back what's left from her allowance. I guess it's kind of weird behavior in Krabs' family. They're just so used to being cheap and tight about money, so something must be up if you're willingly giving money back. By the time everyone is in the freezer, Krabs is out in the restaurant, alone, convinced he's outsmarted the sickness, and starting to develop some huge paranoia. He starts wearing masks and disinfecting the money that Pearl just gave him. Meanwhile, inside the freezer, they're all perfectly fine. Healthy, eating ice cream, even building igloos in the middle of it. Which only means one thing. If nobody in the freezer is sick, the infected one must be the guy doing all the accusing, Krabs. They decided Krabs should be the one inside the freezer and finally break out to confront him. But Krabs doesn't back down. In fact, he doesn't even want to talk about it. The man stands by his decisions. He runs all around the restaurant, crawls under equipment, dives into the grease trap, dodges his own daughter, and fights everyone. And let's just say, the fight was not hygienic. It turns into a dirty, chaotic brawl all day long until the health inspector returns at the end. And then the final punchline came. The health inspector said, "No one was actually sick, I was holding the scanner upside down." Heh. But it was too late. Everyone was already catching different kinds of chronic diseases from all the unsanitary brawling. So the health department decides to do a mega quarantine this time and throws the whole building in the chum bucket. Because of course Plankton had to get caught in the crossfire. That's it. That's the episode. No moral lesson or apology. Now, even on the first watch, you can feel something is off. The moment this episode came out, lots of fans immediately felt disgusted and offended by this episode, for two entirely different reasons. Back when it first aired, lots of people just rejected it. But the most interesting part is that everyone mostly fixated on the theme of the plot. As you can guess, everyone is saying it's a pandemic parody. Too soon, too insensitive. Yep, this topic was making quite the headline back then, because it aired during a time when the entire world was still dealing with lockdowns, fear, and loss. 2021 and 22 in different countries. And you have to remember what 2021 felt like. Most of the world spent the last 2 years stuck inside, losing jobs, losing family members, watching the news every day, wondering what's coming next. People were exhausted, people were scared, people were sick of being sick. So when Quarantined Crab aired, a lot of viewers didn't take it as a silly cartoon plot. They took it as Nickelodeon joking about something that wasn't fully over yet. Dealing with an unknown disease, turning on and accusing each other of being infected, throwing characters in a freezer, panicking over little symptoms. Yeah, that hit a little too close to home. People definitely reacted when they watched this episode. And on Reddit, you had people saying things like, "This comes off as insensitive and looks like it's poking fun at the pandemic, even if that wasn't the intention." That's the key part. Even if the episode was written in 2019, before the pandemic existed in the first place, the audience doesn't watch a cartoon thinking about production timelines. They watch it thinking about their own lives. Some viewers said the ending felt like the show was accidentally implying, "Oh, haha, nobody was sick after all," which in 2021 was basically the most cursed punchline they could have chosen, even if that's not what the writers meant. Of course, Nickelodeon pulled the episode almost immediately. Streaming services removed it, clips were also blocked. Heck, they even left this episode out on the season 12 DVD release. And for a lot of people, that was enough to say, bad modern episode, terrible timing, end of story. But the real twist for this episode is that I think even without the COVID backlash, the episode still feels wrong. And if you still can't guess by the title of this video, the real issue is Mr. Krabs. What he does here quietly reveals his true nature. Because once you focus on Krabs' perspective, this plot starts feeling like something genuinely unpleasant. Which brings us to the actual heart of this topic. As I previously mentioned, the whole panic was actually caused by the health inspector's stupid mistake, right? If someone's got to be held accountable here, it's him. But then after they got trapped inside, aside from the initial 30-second panic attack, everyone calmed down quite easily. Especially after seeing Plankton get incinerated.
Maybe we should stay inside.
Hear that? Squidward already accepts that they're going to be trapped in here for quite a while. And then Pearl only complained because she had to cheer at the big game tomorrow. It's just unfortunate timing. The whole mess actually starts when Krabs starts telling his fun little Navy story. And for a second, you think it's just him bragging about his glory days again. Then he drops this gem. "We just locked the infected guy in the freezer." And Mrs. Puff, who is already regretting every life choice that brought her into this restaurant, asks,
"You let them out of the freezer once they were better."
and Krabs basically goes, "Well, somebody probably did." Excuse me? Probably? My brother and barnacles, that is not a maybe. Pretty sure the infected fish just dropped dead inside the freezer. Or is frozen to meet Spongetron in the future. That's the kind of response you give when you don't want to admit the truth on camera. This one line tells you everything. Krabs didn't panic and improvise for this situation. He definitely didn't make the freezer thing up. He even had a tattoo for it. This was his standard operating method, just neutralizing anyone that poses a threat to him. That's just dark, even for him. And then he immediately reenacts it, on everyone. The moment SpongeBob sneezes, and mind you, he sneezed because Squidward threw pepper into his nose, the entire restaurant flips out like it's a witch trial. Krabs doesn't think twice before snatching him with his forceps, and at that point, you're thinking, surely he won't do that again. SpongeBob has already taken the hit. Oh, but see, that's where the episode goes full speed downhill. Because after SpongeBob, he throws in Patrick, Squidward, Mrs. Puff, and specifically Pearl, his only child. And this man does it with little to no emotional weight. Now, I did mention this episode would make one-course meal look tame, right? Because in one-course meal, as awful as Krabs' character is, you could somewhat understand the initial motives. Plankton was his longtime nemesis, but also his ex-best friend from childhood. Up until this point, Plankton had tried many times to steal the recipe or to drive Krusty Krab out of business. Even at the beginning of the episode, Plankton almost succeeded in stealing the recipe. So from Krabs' perspective, I understand the hate and the goal behind his actions. Discovering that Plankton scares off a whale, Krabs then sees this as an opportunity. He wants to scare Plankton for good, enough to maybe stop him from coming back again, ever, thus securing his business for good. Of course, that's not what really happens. Krabs got carried away and did enjoy torturing Plankton too much. He didn't stop even after SpongeBob warned him about his actions. To the point we get this infamous scene.
Sid, I'm done. The 4:15 bus should be along any time now.
But now, compare that to the Quarantine Krabs plot setup. Judging by his tone during the story of his Navy days, it's not hard to tell he knows what happened to everyone that went inside the freezer. And with that in mind, he throws everyone inside without even properly checking, knowing that they might not come out alive. For Squidward, SpongeBob, and Patrick, I'm not really surprised there. He did sell them a few times to make a quick buck. And then there's some episodes like Out of the Picture and Life Insurance where he specifically wishes for Squidward to die. So yeah, what's new, right? However, there's, quote-unquote, his two favorite gals in there. One is his longtime lover since season 2, Mrs. Puff, and his only beloved daughter, Pearl. The latter who we thought Krabs would do anything in this world to protect, and to make her smile. Sadly, none of that sounds true when Krabs becomes a cornered animal. He looks at everyone as a threat. This man has no feelings when his shell is on the line. At the end of the day, he will sacrifice literally everyone to keep himself safe. I'm sorry, but that's way darker than I scared Plankton with a whale costume. Even when the group actually escapes the freezer, completely healthy by the way, they confront Krabs. Krabs doesn't even think, hey, maybe we should talk about this. He just ditches. This man genuinely believes everyone is infected and out to get him. This is just fear-driven violence at this point. Or maybe worse. He doesn't want to talk about anything and plans to throw everyone into the freezer from the very beginning, since surprise, surprise, the scanner was beeping when it was pointing at Krabs. Maybe Krabs is just scared that if they all get checked out properly, they'll find the symptoms on him. That's why Krabs doesn't want to compromise. Point at everyone before they can point at you, right? Though we find out later that nobody is actually infected by the clam's disease. The health inspector walks in like, LOL, my scanner was upside down. And the episode ends like this is just another silly day at work. Maybe the episode didn't mean to go this dark, it just accidentally showed the audience exactly what Krabs becomes when fear makes the decisions for him. So, is Quarantined Krab the darkest Mr. Krabs episode ever made? Honestly, I think so. Now we know every time Mr. Krabs feels cornered, every ounce of empathy he has goes straight out the window. It's pure self-preservation, cranked up to the ugliest level the show has ever shown, which honestly, fits modern Krabs perfectly. But what's funny is that this isn't the only time fans notice something was off right off the bat. SpongeBob fans have a weird sixth sense for when an episode feels wrong, even if they can't always explain why. I actually talked about that in my previous video, where fans claimed an episode was terrible for years, and as it turns out, they were right, just not for the reasons that they thought. If you want to see another case where the audience picked up on a problem long before the critics did, check out my previous video, SpongeBob fans were right about this episode. I'll see you on the next dive.